Hello everyone, and welcome to our backyard. Today I'm going to talk about hummingbird feeders and which one has been the most successful in our yard. And I'm going to start out with telling you which one has been the most successful, and then walk through each of the ones that you can see here that I have used in my yard, and they all attract hummingbirds. It really boils down to the difficulty in accessing and cleaning the hummingbird feeders. So I garden along the Texas upper southeast coast, just south of Houston, and I garden in zone 9A. We pretty much have hummingbirds all year round. We have them heavily in the fall when they go through their fall migration. We can have 40 to 50 hummingbirds in the yard at a time. Through the spring it's less so, it's more sporadic because they travel for a longer period. And we also have a few, not many, but a few that do stay with us in the summer and actually build nests. And we've got a female right now that has a nest, one or two females in the area that have a nest. So I keep out hummingbird feeders all year round, and it just depends on the number. So I have the most number of feeders out in the fall during the fall migration. So the first one I'm going to talk about is what's most successful in my yard, and hands down it is this high perch or tray type feeder. And you can get these online. You can order this type of construction through Amazon, or you can certainly get it at a store like Wild Birds Unlimited, like I did. And the reason this has been so successful for me is because of the ease of use and the ease of cleaning. There's only 3 parts to it. This upper hard part that's plastic, the lower part where you put the nectar in, and it's also hard plastic and it's curved. There's no nooks and crannies that's difficult to clean. And then the hook to hang the bird feeder. And this construction is simple, but yet so easy to maintain. And this is the only feeder that I use now in my yard, and it is purely because it is the easiest to access and the easiest to clean and to keep clean. So one of the things that you will find in all the videos that talk about feeding hummingbirds the nectar is that you need to keep the feeders clean and you need to keep the nectar fresh. And in the summer they recommend that you change out the nectar every day or every other day to keep it fresh. And down here in the heat and humidity, that can be very inconvenient. And so I use a product that is called Nectar Defender, and it is specifically made for hummingbirds and the nectar. So it was developed by ornithology experts, and I highly recommend this. The micronutrient copper sulfate keeps this nectar safe and for a long period of time. I use this now constantly in the nectar that I set out for the hummingbirds. They say that it will extend the life of your nectar up to 2 weeks. I don't use it that long. I switch out my hummingbird feeder nectar every week, and when I switch it out, this has kept it so fresh. There's nothing in it. There's no mold. There's no cloudiness. It's just the wonderful nectar that you create, the sugar water. And so The only downside is this is expensive, slightly expensive, but to me it's worth it because switching out nectar daily or every other day is not something that I like to do or was interested in doing. Okay, so this is what I use. I have this type of feeder out in my yard, and I do have feeders out, like I said, all year long. Right now, I only have 4 feeders out because predominantly the hummingbirds really very rarely go to it. They do prefer the fresh flowers and the insects. Okay, next I'm going to go through all of the ones that I have tried, and I do like the looks. So I was highly attracted to what hummingbird feeders looked like. And this first one was probably my favorite until I had to clean it. And it was hand-blown glass that hung down from a chain. It had a nice pewter little nest cage that it sits nicely in. And then it had an LED that would light up at night. And I just thought this was so pretty until it came time that I had to clean it. And anything that has rubber tubing, and this was to keep obviously the nectar from spilling, it was the most difficult thing to keep clean. And scrubbing and soaking, I absolutely hated it. And it got to the point where even though I loved this hummingbird feeder, I would not use it, and I put it away because I hated cleaning that thing the most. This was the worst to clean. The next feeders are predominantly similar type concepts. This one happens to be a very inexpensive one that I purchased, and I purchased quite a few of them during the fall hummingbird migration. And these do not detach, and I recommend not buying anything that have what is called bee guards because they get nasty, and you can easily remove these if they are removable, and in this type they are. But there are too many nooks and crannies to clean, and this would get filthy. The tube would get filthy. The bee guard, the bees were just all over trying to get to the nectar. And this, well, all it was just the most difficult thing to keep clean. And so I didn't prefer this type either. These were cheaper and these are not removable, and so it was even worse to clean. I did like, so this is glass. These are glass reservoir tubes. This was plastic. I didn't find either one necessarily to be, I did prefer the glass more. But again, it all came down to what was easy to clean. So I'm going to take these two apart here, and I'll be right back because I can't do it one-handed. Okay, so as you can see in the reservoir, in this glass bottle, you would put the nectar in here, and then you would bring this on the top and screw it in, and then turn it upside down, and the reservoir would fill then out into each one of these petals. It worked fine. So delivery of the nectar was fine. It was all based on cleaning. This one has a little bit different design. The bottom pops out. A little bit easier to clean, kind of like the same premise as the high perch tube feeder that I use. High perch tray feeder that I use, but still had a lot of nooks and crannies, and it got really dirty pretty quickly. But this was also glass, and I liked the fact that it was red. I liked how it looked. And basically, I just didn't like how difficult it was to clean. Okay, the next two. The last two that I want to show you are based on similar design, although this one is a copper feeder. It is glass, and this comes apart very easily, and it was designed to be very close to the tray feeder as far as cleaning. And I did find that it was pretty darn easy to clean, but it leaked. And the other thing that it did is it allowed rainfall to come into the sugar water. And so this was a flaw, because the hook up here was a hole that went straight into the reservoir. And so that was, every time it rained, it pretty much ruined the nectar. So the design was better, although these little petals were difficult to clean. It was getting close to the concept of the tray feeder, but watch out and be careful, because look for the hook. Make sure that's completely closed, otherwise you're compromising your nectar. So this one I really like the look of, and it was pretty close. So you'll see the hook was closed. It was a glass reservoir, and it had the same type of oops, let me see if I can get this popped out here. Sorry about that. It had the same type that the prior feeder did. A nice little tray, easy to clean, definitely easier to clean. The only thing that was difficult is more difficult is the nooks and crannies and keeping these little plastic flowers clean. So as far as the second place winner, if I couldn't have the tray feeder, that's probably the design that I would go for, because it is like a tray feeder. It's just a little bit more difficult to clean because of these, I guess, decorative flowers, trying to simulate a flower. But they would get just so dirty and filthy, and it would take a lot to clean. The other thing I want to point out is there are also types where they have little perches here, so the hummingbirds can sit and perch on the feeder. And then there's also the type where it doesn't, and that's over here on these two. So they have to hover in the air to be able to feed. So that's something that you can consider. It is not a problem, because hummingbirds do that when they feed naturally out in the wild, when they're feeding on flowers. And then the high perch feeder that I have here, this is also a perch. They'll sit on here and then lean down and get into the nectar. So sometimes I see them just sitting on here resting on the perches, where on these type of feeders they can't sit, they have to hover and eat. So whether you prefer to not have to clean, well, I shouldn't say that. I clean them regularly. It's the difficulty in cleaning. And if you don't mind cleaning, I think getting the type that you find most aesthetically pleasing is probably the most fun. I know I liked all different types and all different styles, and I just like the look out in the yard. But it really boiled down to me for cleaning and keeping the hummingbird feeders clean. So I tried quite a few different types. And just to recap, my most successful type in my yard is this high perch tray feeder. It has 3 pieces, only 2 pieces to clean. And then I do use what is called Nectar Defender, which helps keep the nectar fresher longer. It has copper sulfate in it, which is safe for the birds. In fact, copper sulfate is out in nature in the blooms when they are naturally feeding. And so even though that's a little bit more expensive and not just having nectar, to me it's worth it. You can see and try it and see if it's worth it for you also. So feeding hummingbirds and having hummingbirds in your yard has been such a treat for my husband and I. And I do have a couple of videos on how to attract hummingbirds to your yard with flowers. I'm going to link those up at the top, because hands down now in the summer they prefer flowers and insects as opposed to hummingbird feeders, and of course water if you have that for them. It's starting to get nice and bright out. I like to create these videos early in the morning. It's just easier because the sun and the lighting is so much better. But now you can see, I'm just going to pan a little bit here. Now you can see that it's getting pretty bright. You can hear my woodpecker. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah. Came to eat this morning. Very good. Well, thank you for joining me talking about hummingbird feeders. Good luck if you're out ready to purchase one. If you have one and you find it very successful, put down in the comments what yours is and why it's so successful for you, because the more that's shared, the more we all learn. And help others from making mistakes that we've made, or I should say challenges that we've run into. So I hope you all have a great day and good luck in your journey of feeding hummingbirds. Thanks for joining me.